Hi, welcome to PyHacks. Today we're going to be talking about functions. So functions are the powerhouse of Python. They're in everything that we do. So let's get cracking with starting with functions initially. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to create a basic calculator. So the first function we're going to create, we're going to use the def keyword to create the function define. I'm going to call it calc. And this calculator is going to have two parameters that we need values for, value 1 and value 2, and one that's got a default parameter. So actually if you don't pass it to the function, it won't complain because it's then considered, because it's got a default value, it's then considered an optional parameter that you need to pass into the calculation later on. I'll explain that when we call the function. So we actually use the function call, use, same thing. Operator is equal to 0, which is the default one. We're going to create a intermediary. I'm going to create a result variable to store the result. Value 1 plus value 2. Then we say if elif operator is equal to subtraction symbol, result equals value 1, take away value 2. Oop, I'm too far. Elif operator equal to, let's say, division. And these will be passed as string characters, and it's going to perform the operation underneath. Value 1 divided by value 2. And if you want to make sure that it's an integer division, so it returns an integer, Python's got a special double symbol for that. But we're just going to use we want to actually return a float value. Elif operator is equal to, and this time, well, we've not passed multiplication in yet, have we? So let's do multiplication. Operator equals, result equals value 1 times value 2. And we're even going to add a power function in this as well, operator. Let's create a pow. Yeah. Result equals value 1. And then to make something a power in Python, you need to use the double multiplication symbol. Okay. Last thing to do, return. So a function wants to return the actual output of that, so I'm going to return the result as part of that function. So now let's use this. Let's call our function we've just made. First of all, we need to run it, get it into memory. It would all do it automatically anyway. So now I've got this def calculator function. It's available for me to now use. So you've just created your first function. So I'm going to call calc. So it finds the function now. And it expects this value 1, value 2, and it expects an operator as well. So let's say 20 plus 40. And let's call it without the operator. So it's going to essentially give me a plus. So the calc is returned as 60. 20 plus 40 is 60. And it's defaulted to this default parameter. That's why it's an optional parameter, because it's defaulted. It's always going to assume you want to perform an addition unless you override that. So let's now do the same example, but we're going to pass in an operator this time. We're going to do 30 to the 2, and we're going to use the operator equal to power, pow. So 30 times 30, so 30 times itself is 900. So that's the power. And then we can do one more example. Let's do a multiplication. 10, 45. And we use the multiplication symbol. Kalaka. Not uppercase. Got sausage fingers today. Calc is 450. So yeah, that's working right. I'm happy with that. Okay, so The problem, can you see the problem with this? We can only pass in 2 values. So what if we want to pass in an unknown amount of values? So we're going to deal with unknown arguments, otherwise known in Python as args. So we need to essentially, we're only going to do this sum example this time. So def sum calculator, just to illustrate the concept. So to create a default number of args, there's a special operator that you put inside your function parentheses. So inside the function parameters. Use the asterisk sign, value. So default, we don't know the number of values we're going to pass in. I'm going to specify our operator because it is again, I'm going to use the operator equals to the addition. So we're going to store these in a list. So result list. Let's just get some more space on the screen back. So we've got result list. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go for each argument. So for each argument that we pass into that function in our val, so our vals, so our args that we're going to pass are unknown arguments. We're going to use the hold that result list outside of the for loop. We're going to say result list.append, so append into the results, our args. And then from there, we're going to say if operator equals to, and then this addition, result equals the sum, so the sum method, because it's global, it's going to apply across all items in that list, so all those iterable items, return the sum of a start value. We're going to pass in our result list, because we've now essentially through that iteration process, result is the sum of that result list, and then we're going to return the result. Okay. So what this is going to do, let me just take you through it step by step. So it's going to create an empty list. We've got these unknown arguments we're going to pass in. Our default operator is always going to be addition. If you wanted to build this out, you'd need to think about all the values that might be passed through and how you'd then divide them up, whether it globally or value by value, etc. That's why we're just summing up the global list for so far. So for argument in the set of values, so this val that we passed here, it's got to match that. Result list, we're going to append each of those items. Every time it loops through this, it's going to append that arg that we passed through. And then if the operator equals to this, it's going to return the result equal to the sum of the result list. Okay. So let's run that. And we should have this now in memory to work with. So this is going to work a little bit better now for me. Some count, because I'm not limited by the number of values I need to put in. 10, 20, 34, 23, 12. So I can add many, many values together. I can see 10 plus 30, 34, 64, 20. Yep, we're getting there. That looks good. And like say, if you wanted to verify that, you could just do it in the console, like 10 plus 20 plus 34 plus 23 plus 12. 99. There you go. So that's working lovely. So that's creating that list of arguments, and then it's performing a sum on that result list. So it all happens inside the function. This is not returned to your variable explorer. because the variable is created inside the function and it's not available to the global scope, the global environment. It's just local to this function. So all the logic happens inside the function, and then when you call it, that's when it's evaluated. It's called a lazy evaluation. Okay, so we've dealt with unknown arguments. So say you don't know anything. This is a concept called kwargs or kwargs, dealing with keyword arguments. Dealing with keyword arguments. And I'll show you an example to reinforce this. And the actual code for that, you'll see it sometimes in Python functions, is called kwargs. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a function which is just called unknown args. And we're going to pass in, so as before we had this single asterisk, here we're going to say double. So it's kwargs. We don't actually know. There's multiple arguments that are unknown is essentially the difference. That's why it's kwargs or kargs. It's for each k new function you pass in, just a statistical notation. You'll be familiar with it if you've ever done k-means clustering or anything like that. Okay, unknown args. So we're going to just print out the unknown that we've passed to it. Again, remember that it's got to match whatever's passed into your parameter. So all we're going to do is just print out what those unknown args are. And then you need to then, if you're going to do something more advanced, handle for any of those unknown items, which sometimes is very difficult because here we just don't know what's going to be passed. So unknown args then. So that's my new function I've just created. There's nothing in there, it just doesn't know what to pass to it. So I'm going to specify I want a variable called name. I'm going to call that Gary. I'm going to add my age. I'm going to admit it now, 39. And let's say, I don't know, something stupid like favorite band. Or, yeah, favorite band. Oh, that's a hard one. I'm quite partial to Foo Fighters, to be honest, and Nirvana and all that kind of era of grunge, so let's leave it there. So when it calls, okay. Oh, it's not actually, I've not done the function yet. So this is actually now passed a value or returned a value, and it's going to return a dictionary because there's multiple values that you pass to it, and they've got key value pairs. So we've got this name, and we've got the value. I call it dictionary new or dict new, whatever. So if I run that again, now I've got this dictionary new. So it prints it out like a dictionary with these key value pairs, and you could then cast it out into a dictionary. So you can see that I've got my name. It looks like a set actually. I've got a name is equal to Gary, age is 39, and my favourite band's Foo Fighters. Before that function didn't know what arguments were going to be passed, so it then just has to know how to perform something on those arguments. But then there are times when you won't know what functions are passed through to the function itself. But I rarely use this function, to be fair. I tend to use the args function quite a lot. You'll use default parameters a lot and optional parameters. Okay, that kind of brings us to the end of this tutorial, but I will then try and cram in something called lambda functions, so anonymous functions. So a lambda function, just to explain, is a small anonymous function. This function can take any number of arguments, but can only have one expression. And lambda functions are normally captured on one line. So I'll show you how to implement a lambda function. So before we had this calculator, and we took the square root, didn't we, here? Oh, we raised it to a power. Here we're going to take the square root. So lambda functions are created by specifying the function lambda. And you've got a parameter list. It tells you in the doc string how to work with it. Lambda. I'm going to ask value. So any value we pass. is value, and this is where your expression comes in. So it's going to return the value, whatever the expression is here. So I'm going to say that our square function, actually it's not square, is it? It's power again, power. So here, if we print out our print, so that's the function in itself. Look how much it's reduced it. So with these calculator functions, you've got it over multiple lines. A lambda function's all contained on one line, and that's going to give me that power function that I was looking for. So if I print power of 10, 10 times 10, I keep forgetting to actually define the function. So 10 times 10, as we know, is 100. Five times 5 is 25. As we know, it's half of 50. So it's going to work. And that's essentially just created a very small function, anonymous function in Python that's then available to be evaluated and called. So we could create a similar example as we did with the args. So dealing with args functions, where we've got a multiple number of arguments that we then need to capture and evaluate. So what we did, we captured these by creating a results list, and then we summed that list up. One other way to do it would be to create a, let's call it a summer function. And we're going to create a lambda function again. I'm going to pass in val1, val2, val3, multiple arguments this time. And then from that, we're then going to say, so from these inputs, what are we going to do? What expression are we going to perform? So we're simply going to do value 1 plus value 2 plus value 3. Print summer 5, 10, 23. Because it expects 3 values, like it's created that function. Can you see though, this is why it's anonymous. When I called that function, let's do it again. There's no documentation available, there's no function name. It's anonymous to this specific Python environment. And you sometimes use functions on the fly when you're trying to map functions. So we'll talk about map and apply and filter and reduce functions in another tutorials as separate. But use it when you want to apply things on the fly on a data frame, create manipulations inside a pandas data frame. Perhaps work with NumPy arrays, which we're going to get onto later on. Essentially, it's just meant to be a function that can quickly be evaluated for that specific context. Whereas these functions that we created up here could be packaged up and added onto PyPy. So that's essentially how you create a lambda function. You can add function parameters, default and optional ones, create a calculator, deal with args, so unknown arguments, deal with keyword arguments, so keyword arguments because there's a key and value pair, and then essentially it can deal with an unknown k amount of arguments. So you could keep going with that. I could add another one on the end of it saying, I don't know, likes beaches, I don't know, equals true. Something like that. So F9. Look, it's passed in that now, and you just keep extending it out as far as you want to this unknown args. You can pass as many through. But obviously, that's a very simple example. You just want something that prints. You'd want to then capture these arguments and then do something with them. That's a little bit more complicated and outside of the scope of today. But it just gives you an introduction of how you'd want to use that function. Okay guys, thanks for watching this tutorial. It's been great. Like I say, if there's any questions you got for me, post them on YouTube. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, please. Put a star on GitHub, fork the repository if you want to look at the code. Again, it's got more examples than just the ones that I've indicated so far. I've gone all the way up to NumPy arrays and data visualization, creating class methods, classes, functions, looping through lists, etc. So yeah, you guys stay safe, and I'll see you on the next tutorial. Cheers, guys.